Hello and welcome guys. Today you will see how to change brakes, rotors and pads on 2014 Volvo S60 P3 platform. So let's jump straight into it. Jack up the car. I will be doing the front left side, so I choked the opposite side rear wheel and also left the car in the first gear. Now we can remove the wheel by undoing the lug nuts. It may be easier whilst the car is still on the ground, but if you have an impact wrench as I do, you should be fine doing it in the air as well. It's a good idea to remove the tiny rotor retainer screw while the caliper is still in the place. Let me give you a few tips on that one. Either leave your car in the first gear if it's a front-wheel drive car to prevent the rotor from spinning, or place a screwdriver into the rotor vents and let it hold against the caliper in the case you have vented brake rotors. Or just ask someone to press the brake pedal while you are removing the retainer screw. Now in my case I will need a T50 Torx bit. Be careful while breaking it loose. You don't want to run the head off, believe me. Ask me how I know. Go ahead and remove the little spring-like caliper retainer, but be careful, you don't want it to jump into your eyes. Next thing is to remove the two rubber covers to get access to the caliper bolts. You will need a 7mm Allen key or a bit to undo those bolts. Once the bolts are undone, you can push them back a little bit with a screwdriver, pushing on the threads. Then remove the caliper from its place. It was pretty easy in my case. And then hang or place the caliper on the strut and zip tie if you prefer. Next we can remove the caliper holding bracket. Useful tip is to clean off the surface of the bolt from rust with a wire brush and spray some penetration fluid like WD-40 on it. You will need an 18mm socket for the bolt. Now here are a couple tips if you have difficulties removing it as I had. You can use an impact wrench if you have good access to the bolt, or use a 1/2-inch ratchet and press on it with your foot, or use a flex head ratchet as I did and put a jack handle over it to have a bigger leverage. Obviously, you wouldn't have these issues if the car was on a 2-post lift, because you are able to put greater force on the end of the ratchet wrench. Undo both bolts and remove the bracket. Well, now to the controversial part. In one of my YouTube shorts, I had a huge debate in the comments section whether it is a good idea to remove the brake rotors the way as I removed them or not. So here are my 2 cents. Few tips to remove the rotor, whether it's stuck or not. First one, the old one. Spray some penetration fluid to the lug nut holes and around the surface where the rotor meets the hub, then hit it between the lug nuts with a sledgehammer or a rubber mallet. Yes, I am aware that it is neither a sledgehammer nor a rubber mallet what I'm using. It is for demonstration only, because I don't have them. If that doesn't work and you are not keeping the rotors, hit the surface of it in a cross pattern to break it loose. You can use an air hammer for these techniques as well. Some rotors have 2 threaded holes for bolts to thread in and push against the hub in order to remove the rotor. If you have those, you can consider yourself lucky and obviously use those. Or you can try it with a puller tool if you have access to one. However, I couldn't demonstrate that one because I haven't had any. Or lastly, you can use a bolt with a nut what fits through the knuckle ear hole, and it is long enough to push off the rotor. So put the bolt through the knuckle ear hole. You can use a washer to distribute the force applied against the knuckle ear better, and then thread it in the nut. If you want to keep your rotors, just place an old brake pad between the bolt and the rotor in order to prevent it from any damage. Or if it is a scrap material, you just simply use the bolt without anything. Now hold against the bolt by having the nut held by a spanner whilst ratcheting the bolt, and voila, you should hear a popping noise and the rotor is broken free from rust. Now you can remove it with ease. After all this struggle comes the easy part, to replace the old parts with new ones. You want to clean your hub the best as you can to have the most flat contact surface between the rotor and the hub. You may want to put some anti-seize on the hub surface to prevent it from rust in the future. Now, some of you may have noticed that I have a brand new wheel hub / bearing, and yes, that's correct, and I have a video on that one as well. Click to the top right corner to see it. So after you cleaned the hub, place the new rotor on it and tighten it up with a retainer screw. Some kits may come with a new retainer screw. If your one does, use that one. Clean your caliper holding bracket where it makes contact with the brake pads. Also, you can use some anti-seize there as well. Secure it back to the knuckle with the 2 bolts. You can check and loop the 2 pins in the caliper if it is necessary. Now you have to push back the piston in the caliper. In order to do that, open the brake fluid reservoir cap under the hood. I highly recommend to use this kind of tool that I am using in the video to press back the piston. Sure, you can use different one if you prefer. So push back the piston and then place the pads to their place, and then attach the caliper to the bracket and tighten the bolts holding them together. Replace the rubber covers and the caliper retainer spring. Finally, put the wheel back and tighten the bolts. Then you can lower the vehicle, and most importantly, don't forget to torque down the wheel nuts to the manufacturer specified torque specs. Yes, I know that is not a torque wrench, but I did it off camera. Thank you guys for watching.